Hi everyone, welcome to module number 7, where we're going to look at the juvenile justice system and how it has evolved from a rehabilitative model to a more punitive model that critics have often said is more in line with the adult system than the way it should be as a rehabilitative model designed to address juvenile offenses before being transferred onto the adult docket. In 1899, the first juvenile offender courts were authorized by the Illinois legislature. Around this particular time and into the 1900s, the juvenile courts were mainly used as a model to address non-criminal matters. It was formed on the philosophy of parens patriae, where the state was actually authorized to intervene in a juvenile's life as if they were the role of the parent. And back in the 1900s, this model was based on addressing many status offenses that are non-criminal matters. Issues such as truancy, failure to obey parents, failure to obey school teachers. And it was the court would intervene in those matters. Juveniles would be referred to the courts and assigned a probation officer, and the child's behavior was monitored in order to try to defer a juvenile from going down the road towards criminal behavior. But back then there were issues when the juveniles failed that particular model, or if they did commit criminal offenses, they would be referred to the court and then placed in youth reformatories, which were the equivalent of jails, however, where only juvenile offenders could be housed. That system of parens patriae began to break down in the 70s and into the 80s. And by the time the late 80s and early 90s rolled around, as a result of a large number of violent crimes having been committed by juvenile offenders, criminal justice experts saw a huge number of cases being transferred from the juvenile court system to the adult court system. That did away with many of the safeguards of juvenile courts. The procedures in the courts, in the juvenile courts, are much different than the adult court. For instance, the juvenile court proceedings are in secret. The records are sealed. So a juvenile offender does not end up with a criminal record. Also, besides being in secret, some of the policies are different in that juveniles are not charged with crimes. Their motions are filed for delinquency. They are not found guilty. They're adjudicated delinquent. So it's a different, softer model, more based on rehabilitation. Now, there have always been cases that have been too serious to be handled by juvenile courts. And when that occurs, the method used to address violent crime committed by juveniles is a method called transfer. And it's certainly not a new method, but in the late 80s and early 90s, and continuing to in many jurisdictions today, there are a number of cases of juvenile offenders being transferred to the adult court has skyrocketed. And make no mistake about it, it is in response to the greater number of violent offenses being committed by juvenile offenders. What are the consequences of a transfer to adult court? Well, obviously, they're convicted if they are found guilty. They have a criminal record, and they are sent to adult facilities with many issues that arise by sending juveniles to prison. So we're going to look at what were the methods of how our cases transferred from the juvenile court to the adult court. And we're going to look at some new rehabilitation models that are designed to rehabilitate juveniles before they are faced with transfer to adult court for a serious crime. And we'll see how the earlier method of rehabilitation did not follow what is now called evidence-based practices towards designing rehabilitation programs that are better prepared to try and rehabilitate the juvenile offenders in our system. I look forward to interacting with you and seeing what you think of this new particular model of juvenile justice. Thank you.